Hello, good evening from the UK. Good evening as well from Nigeria, Africa. Um, good, I don't know what the time is in Qatar at the moment, but I'm hoping someone is watching from there in Australia and the US. Yeah, so it's good to be here again for our regular conversation where we come to just discuss and reflect on life, really, on this platform. Just again, if you're joining today for the first time, if today is your first time of tuning into this particular show, my name is Tony or Ifeanyi. I answer all of them. Um, and I'm a guest presenter on the platform. This is the Roadmap MBA platform founded by Steve Pugh. Um, Very easy, very clearly, it's expected to be an e-learning, collaboration platform for business leaders, for business value creators, career professionals, students, whoever just wants to improve his or her life is more than welcome to tune in to this platform regularly because I can assure you we share a lot of insights into life happenings. I think one of the things I've come to learn in this platform is that we're kind of the kings of mindfulness. If there is anything happening in the world, be rest assured that we're going to speak about it here and we're going to tell you what it means for you as a business person, as a career professional, whatever it is you do in life, we're going to be able to dissect and kind of throw up those difficult questions. In fact, on this same platform, if you're a student, you should be ready to learn something about your research. We throw up some difficult, innovative problems here, and then we ask people to go solve them. And this is how we create magic that the world needs, really. So you're welcome to this show. This is my show. Like I said, I'm a guest presenter, and the show, the platform is Roadmap MBA, and we are on a mission to help people around the world build a better life for themselves, creating an accessible platform for all communities to thrive and celebrate together. I think in mindfulness of celebration, the World Cup has just commenced yesterday, and we're in England, we're in the UK. England has just played today, and we were very, very happy we won our game. We won Iran 6-2. So we're excited in the UK, we're excited in England. Of course, the UK is comprised of 4 different states, if you will, and then we're having Wales also play this evening. So today is actually the day of football for us, and we're really excited. We're hoping that our teams do well and bring back the trophy. My home country is not there, so I'm a little bit selfish now because this is my new country, and I wanted to come to the UK. I wanted to come to England, not Wales anyway, England. So welcome once again. Pretty happy to be here today. Like I said, also on the Roadmap MBA, we've hit a very, 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 very huge milestone, which is worth celebrating as well in the spirit of celebration. Our website is now live. It has been there, but we have the new website now live to use. It is roadmapmba.com. You can just go in there and then you'll be able to kind of engage with what the platform offers and what happens there. There is an opportunity for you to to register for free and join in most of what we do, access all the materials there for free. There is a book as well, which if you register, you can get a copy of it. That's it. It's the roadmap book, very self-explanatory, wonderful case studies written by Steve himself. So you can, and I would usually advise, go on there, roadmapmba.com, and quickly register. You can register for the free version. There is a paid version as well to get more things. And one of the good things around the paid version is that if you register and you pay, you're actually paying forward, really, because it helps Steve, who's the founder, to also offer this service or this platform to people who do not have to pay, right? So, and then we're able to also offset some part of the carbon used in the world. So you can see we're a green company as well, a green platform. And that's one of the reasons I am part of this platform, because it is a platform that's sustainable in itself and, seeking to ensure that we bequeath, a livable earth, a livable world to our children. So head on to the website. We're really excited in Roadmap MBA that the new website is ready. So please head on there and get yourself. In addition to that, we're also extending the Black Friday discount, which is, was supposed to end tonight, but Steve has graciously moved it for another week. So please head on there. If you want to get onto the paid version, you're able to use BF 2022 as a discount code, and you get 30% at the checkout. So please head on there and subscribe, and let's continue this. Let's build this community of value creators. Really, that's actually what we're trying to do, right? So today I'm not having slides. I intentionally don't have any slides. I want to make it as interactive as possible, just so that we can. Okay, I'm seeing on LinkedIn that it's 9 p.m. in Qatar. Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, so it's. I don't have any slides today, like I said. I want us to have, kind of a reflection and interaction around a few things that are happening and what we can learn. In fact, what I have termed today's topic is actually what I call the 7 cures for a lean pause, and I will tell you why. 7 cures for a lean pause. So this is a reflection of a book I read recently, which is The Richest Man in Babylon by Judge Clason. So I'll just pick some excerpts from there for us to discuss based on what's happening at the moment globally. There is every need for us to kind of go back to basic financial truths and begin to help ourselves. So, but just before we delve into this, I think it'll be good to to just share quickly what my last 2 weeks have been since the last time I left here. Just to also mention, I present every 2 weeks, Mondays by 6 p.m. in the UK, 7 p.m. in Nigeria. I think 9 p.m. in Qatar. I've just remembered that now. So I present once in 2 weeks, every fortnight. So since the last time, and I'm taking a cue from so you may not have heard about my personal adventures in the past, but I'm taking a cue from Steve. Whenever Steve graces this platform, and this is something that I feel has endeared people to the platform, which is the fact that in this platform we try to share openly our vulnerabilities without holding back just because someone can learn from them. We try to be as open as it can get, and I'm trying to take a cue from Ashley and Steve, who do that very well. They usually talk about their previous days or their weeks or something before they comment. So I'm just trying to share a few things about my last 2 weeks. Last Saturday I went to the Lake District. So at some point I felt like I needed a break. Like I had, I was really, really, really tired, exhausted with work. And I felt like I needed a break. And so I booked a tour with Long Tours. A friend of mine owns that company, Rob. So I went with them to the Lake District. It's somewhere in the northwest of England, about 2 hours away from Newcastle, where I stay. And it was really wonderful because in the Lake Districts it's a mountainous region. You have a lot of mountains around. You have a lot of parks, a lot of beautiful sights to see. We went on a boat cruise, you know, and then we went to the Windermere, right? And you know, as part of that tour, I got to find out that one of our top artists in the UK, Taylor Swift's, not in the UK anyway, but Taylor Swift actually did sing one of her, you know, compose one of her songs in the Lakes District, Windermere. If you Google it, you will find it there. So, you know, it's a beautiful place where you know, you really engage with nature. We saw the sunset. Just set down into the horizon. It was really, really remarkable. And I think for me, one of the most interesting things of that trip was the fact that I was able to meet people, because that's my stock in trade, really. I just love to meet people. I love to make friends. I made a friend from Germany, Alex. I made other friends, and it was really interesting just chit-chatting with folks. And then we had quite a bit of exercise, 15,000 steps, you know, and it was really interesting. So if you're somewhere in the UK, you really want to plan to visit the Lake District sometime. It's a beautiful place. It's a beautiful place. And then within the week, I was in London. I usually go to London for work, and I was in London and had one of the best experiences with my colleague. I'm sure if she's listening, she would, this is, you know, telling her that it was a good time, you know, having that conversation in the office. And for me, it was me reflecting again on the dangers of remote working. When you work from home, you know, it's all about you and your computers and you know, kind of the avatars, if you will, of your colleagues on Teams or on Zoom or something. And it just doesn't feel real. Right. So I really cherished the fact that within those few days I spent in the office, working from the office, we had some very far-reaching conversations, discussing about life, really. You know, while we were working, we're discussing about life. I felt really, really happy about that fact, you know, that I got to really know her a little more, you know. And so for me, I think the beauty is in hybrid work, if at all. I think it won't be fair to take away the whole work from the office entirely, because it comes with its benefits of, you know, networking, really knowing who your colleagues are. It makes the work better. To be honest, we did quite a bit of brainstorming. We created magic while we're in the office together, and I think that's the whole goal of every enterprise, really. And then on my way back from London, my train was cancelled. So there was flooding in the northeast of England, from Newcastle to Edinburgh. There was flooding on the way, so my train was cancelled. I had to book a coach. So, you know, in place of a 3 hours trip, I made 7 hours on the coach, which was, you know, really, really supposed to be difficult. But again, you see, when you never let a good crisis to waste, you know. So within that 7 hour trip, I met, in fact, my seatmate, the person who was sitting close to me in the coach, was a 68-year-old woman whom we had just met, and we chatted for 6 hours out of the 7 hours, like we had known before. So for me, it was the fact that I was able to connect with her, and she shared some very strong life secrets with me. Honestly, a 68-year woman went for an interview. In fact, that sounded to me like not real. She's retired, she's 68, but she went for an interview, right? And then, you know, if you look at where, you know, the kind of place where we are, where 18-year-olds are all queuing in for universal credit. There is a 68-year-old woman who's a pensioner, who didn't even like the fact that the government was going to increase pensions by 10%, because she felt they didn't need it, because she felt she could work, and she was still doing other interviews to have more jobs, because she felt that she loved doing what she was doing. It was, for me, a mindset shift, you know, from what I used to see in my previous, you know, with my previous engagements with younger people, queuing for universal credit. So I learned a lot from her, and then finally, you know, in the home front, my two kids have been taking turns to be sick. So this one gets well, the other one starts. So it's been some sleepless nights. I'm sure if you look at my eyes, you'll find that I've not had some good sleep in a while. But again, that's the beauty of it. When you have them running around sometimes, other times they're quiet, and then so it goes. So enough of my last 2 weeks. If you're there, you can jump in the chat. How was your 2 weeks? How was your week? How was your weekend? Let's keep that conversation going. Again, the goal around sharing this is just so that you know the humans behind the conversations. We keep saying this, we are not experts. What we do here is to stir up conversation, is to collaborate, to try to bring up those topical issues and let's discuss them. And let's brainstorm. Let's create magic as we move on, and that's what the world actually needs, right? So that's it about my last 2 weeks. Pop in there and tell us about yourself. Tell us about your week, where you're watching from. And even if you're going to watch this after it's gone, not on the live show, please drop a comment when you see this and let us know where you're from. So today, really, we'll be looking at, and like I said, I was going to discuss the 7 cures for a lean pulse. And this, for me, I didn't really plan to do this. And this has been this story of this platform, really. Most of what we discuss are things that happen, live engagements, we things happen, and then we bring them here to share with everyone, just so that we can all learn and run. Some of the information we share here, you may know them, but what we try to do is to bring out uncommon insights from common activities, right? Just, that extra thinking to say, this has just happened. What does it really mean for me? What does it mean for us? What does it mean for businesses globally? It could be happening in the UK, but what does it mean for business in the EU? What does it mean for career professionals in Nigeria? What does it mean for immigration? What does it mean for anything, right? So here we just discuss those things and we kind of throw them open. We may not answer everything right here, but we steer the conversations, and then we allow people and we invite people, right, to continue to discuss and drop those solutions, and we can create some real cool stuff from these conversations. So for me, the reason why this topic came about was what's happening globally at the moment. We are in a global crisis. I think that's common knowledge. Everyone knows that at the moment. We're in a global crisis, and we're still grappling with major issues. Inflation, global inflation is on the high, triggered by food and energy. Those are the 2 big drivers of inflation globally. So it's not just a United Kingdom problem. It's not an Africa problem. It's not a Nigeria problem. It's not an Asia problem. It's a global problem, right? And we are all grappling with that. So there is a need for us to reflect on how do we get through this period, right? And how can we even turn this into an opportunity, right? That helps us start. I made reference to a quote at the beginning here: "Never let a good crisis to waste." It's something that, and this is something I usually do. I usually like to turn a car wreck into a picnic, right? And that's me. I'm one of the most optimistic folks you can ever meet. I don't believe there is anything called, there's anything bad in anything, right? I always see the good side in things that the world calls bad, right? So we can turn this into our benefit if we really understand the nuances of the times, how we can position ourselves, and how we can, practice some new financial tips that would help us. They're not new, they're over 100 years. Interestingly, when I read the Richest Man in Babylon, it was done in the 1920s. Really, it's a book about a story in the 1920s. So it's over 100 years, but you know what? It is still relevant till this time. So let's quickly look at trying to domesticate it in the UK, right? We've just had another milestone on the 17th, right? In a bid to solve these global shocks, every country is trying to bring out fiscal policies, monetary policies, whatever policies that helps them cope with this global problem, right? So we in the UK had the budget, what we call the autumn budget. It has been long anticipated. In fact, it was more or less, people became more aware about government budgets after the mini budget, right? The one that really caused major shocks within the political class, that actually led to the passing of a vote of no confidence in the market, that set the government out. So we all became more interested. In fact, on this platform, we had discussed the implications of the falling pounds, right? Because we had a nosedive of the pound sterling. We had discussed those implications. So we were all looking forward when the new government came in. They moved the autumn budget a week or two away just so they could, buffer it well. We have that budget out now on the 17th, and we are now on that budget. So that's new milestone, I would say, that that has led me to say, okay, what can we glean from that budget, and then proceeding from there, what do we need to do to stay afloat, and not just staying afloat, to leverage the situation to build wealth. Again, Steve usually makes me this, and he does a magical coffee here. So so if you see Steve anywhere, tell him thank you for me. Let's just take a quick look. What was the summary of this budget, right? And if you're somewhere around the world, I'm not going to pay so much attention to the specificities of our local budget, our budget in the UK, but I'm just going to be making references and picking out some inferences, because there's some words that are coming out now. Everyone is talking, oh, is this austerity 2.0, or are we, given the UK's economy is in a recession, we've had a contraction for the second consecutive, is it second or third now, consecutive quarter. So our economy is contracting. There is no growth, right? So we're in a recession. It's no news. So when you're in a recession, you need to, so to say, imbibe some new characteristics or some new attitudes that lead you out of there, because it's the prosperity of every home or every person that builds up collectively into the prosperity of the UK. If we, just like the PM keeps talking about managing energy, we need to all individually conserve energy in our homes. It is our individual efforts that collectively, leads to the efficiency of the country. So let's talk about this budget very quickly. It was termed the budget of stability, growth, and public services. And let me say this: I felt that post the budget, I felt it wasn't as bad as people thought. And Steve had made mention about it, I think on Friday, when he talked very briefly about the UK budget, in passing in one of his strategy session. And then he talked about, something very important, which I liked. A lot of people have been talking about the budget and how it was going to be very, very, very difficult decisions. People had termed it austerity 2.0, like I mentioned. But from a personal point of view, I didn't think it was a very bad budget. I didn't think it was a bad budget, actually. Because eventually, I think the right answers have been put on the table, even though, to Steve's point, we are just postponing the evil day, if you will. And that's a very smart political decision. It's not for me to dissect, because this is not a political program. It's for us to look at the implications of that, right? For business people as well. What are the implications? So one of the key things around economic and fiscal outlook really was around the UK has now put a kind of boundaries around its global borrowings. And if you recall, one of the issues or one of the things that led to the markets collapsing or market vote of no confidence on the previous prime minister was the fact that people didn't know how those tax cuts were going to be repaid, right? So the market was, and the last thing you want to do in the market is speculations, right? And I really give it to this government, really, because I think they've learned very fast. Before the budget even came out, we were getting snippets of what was going to come. In fact, nothing came as a surprise again because we virtually knew almost everything that was going to come out. And that's the way you test the market. You know, going back to what Steve was talking about, the one jump, not two. Sorry, is that correct? One jump, not two. Yeah, where you don't make two jumps at the same time. You don't take too much at the same time as a business person. You want to test the market gradually. And that was exactly what this government did. You know, they were testing the market, throwing things to the media gradually. So they pushed the date for the autumn statement far away and kept on throwing snippets into the media, and we were digesting them. The market was reacting gradually, you know, and that's a very, very smart thing I have learned too from this whole episode, that in this kind of big decisions, you have to go gradually. You know, don't push everything once, because you know, people in organizations as well as, you know, they're just like the market. You could get your vote of no confidence as fast as you push those things out. So the UK has kind of put a boundaries to what the borrowings will be over the next 5 years. They call it rolling 5-year periods, that borrowing will not exceed 3% of GDP. And that makes a lot of sense because most of these, government is a continuum, even though they may not be there when these other things happen. But in terms of economics, people want to know long term, because when you're talking about gilts, the gilt market is a long term market. You know, people want to know what happens in the long term. And even our borrowers want to also know how stable we are, what are our plans for the future, you know. So this is something that I felt was very good. And then interestingly, or not interestingly, the OBR, which is the Office for Budget Responsibility, which is an independent arm that helps to, you know, kind of balance the government's books, if you will, tells us exactly how it is, how bad or how good it is. So irrespective of what the government says, and you know, the OBR comes out to tell us exactly what it is. And not so good news, they said. Inflation is high. Disposable income has plummeted, and it's going to be so for the next 2-3 years. So what does that really mean? Disposable income, that's the money available to you and I to do other things, right? To save, maybe. So, and that's part of the triggers for this particular topic, right? Our disposable incomes are going down. In fact, the forecast says that they're going to drop by 4.3% 2022 and 2023, and then by further 2.8% in 2023, 2024. So, and that's the worst they have seen within a very long time. I think about 40 years, if I'm not mistaken, right? So it's bad. It's bad. So, and this is local to us in the UK. Disposable incomes are going to shrink. What that means is that if you had a lot of monies to do a lot of things without thinking about them, now you need to start thinking about how you manage those, you know, the lean pause. That's what I call it. And that's what it's called in The Richest Man in Babylon, the lean pause. So we're going to, you know, kind of reflect on how, you know, 7 cures for that. Another interesting thing that happened was the tax. You know, two key things that we knew was going to happen is either the government was going to raise tax or reduce spending on public services. But you know, the government found a way to manage that very interestingly. I think they're really smart, honestly. So what we're seeing is that we're having, you know, there is the what we call the windfall tax, for instance, which is you know, a tax that is levied on any industry, could be any company that is experiencing kind of an unusual gain or unusual profit from something that it's not directly linked to its business line or its strategy or its some. So it's like a windfall, something happening somewhere else, impacting our business, and we're getting kind of an astronomical profit. Then the government comes in to tax you a little more, which I think is only reasonable, really. So the government has increased the windfall tax, right, from 25%, which was just imposed in May here. And the windfall tax on energy companies is that post-COVID, a lot more people began to use the products from these energy companies, right? So what meant that revenue went up, profit went up, and then the Russia issue as well has also meant that the market has been, oil prices have gone up. So these oil companies are making extra bucks, and so the government is saying, because you're making more, we're going to tax you a little bit more, so from 25% to 35%. But there's something really interesting I wanted to point out when, just mentioning the windfall tax, and which is something that, there are other schools of thought that are saying that this is just what they call robbing Peter to pay Paul, right? There is something happening within the energy sector, and many people may not understand that for energy companies in the UK, there is what they call it kind of, they're able to reclaim their tax if they do investments in the UK, right? So most of the same companies that are going to be charged higher now for the windfall tax have not really paid tax in the UK for a number of years. And that was really interesting, because I know that when government comes out with some of these policies, what you see is that companies go back and then they re-strategize on how do we optimize, not avoid anyway, because there's a difference between tax avoidance and tax optimization. So they go there, they go in to think about how do we optimize our tax burdens, or how do we optimize our tax expenditures, and then they leverage all the things available. And there's a law in the UK that if you, as an oil company, if you spend, for every £1 you spend, you invest in the UK, you get a 91 pence rebate, right? So what they're doing is they've found ways to invest the monies back in the UK, and then they don't pay. In fact, some of them lay more claims to the government to pay them because they've done more investment, and so companies like Shell, companies like BP, Shell and BP, they're on negative tax net. If you net off their tax and their rebates that they've collected, they're on negative at the moment, which means that they do more investment. But again, that's part of the things the Labour Party keeps saying, oh no, why are you doing this? But again, this is politics. But for us, it's just a case of businesses need to look for the best ways to make profit, right? But these are the things that are happening. There's also the capital gains, which is something that I think can impact individuals. The capital gains tax. It simply says that if you buy something and after a while you want to sell it off and you make a profit, there is a threshold, right, that is non-tax deductible, right? So and in the past it used to be 12,300 or so. Yeah. So it's okay. It has been reduced now from 12,300 to 6,000, I think, in April, where usually if you bought something for 100 grand and after a while you sold it for 120 grand, right? 12,300, you don't pay tax on that. You only pay tax on the difference between that and 1,000 and what you sold it. But now it's going to come down. So what that means is that you're going to pay more tax on your profits, of assets that you dispose. So what's this going to happen? What do you think is going to happen here? What do you think is going to happen here? So if we're talking about, and this also implies there's also the dividends as well. If you are on a regular dividend, government pays, maybe you bought shares somewhere and you receive dividends regularly. There is also a tax threshold that has also been reduced. So whatever you receive, if you receive more than certain amount, you begin to be taxed on that. So what do you think is going to happen here? In my understanding, I think, in fact, some of these investment managers already noted that immediately after the autumn budget statement, a lot of customers started calling in their managers to ask them, because they have 6 months between now and the next 6 months before this kicks in, how do they make the best of this time? So there may be a lot of properties going into the market because people will want to sell off their second properties. Again, this only occurs, or this only happens when you're selling your second property. If it's your main property, you don't get to pay tax on them, on the profit. But if it's your second property, so it's usually for those who are in enterprise, right, who do kind of buying and selling kind of stuff, buy investment, right? So you may begin to see people dumping their assets, and that will lead to kind of a price crash. So I don't know what's going to be in the housing sector. I don't know what's going to be with shares. Are we going to begin to see people diversifying into other forms of investment? Maybe crypto, who knows? Crypto is actually, this is the best time really. I think Steve did mention about the crash happening in crypto, the FTX and all that. And I think this is around the lowest ebbs of crypto, which means that this is actually the time where people want to buy. Are we going to see people dump their regular shares, and then move into this unguarded kind of space? Again, these are, things that could happen. We don't know. But it could be what you're thinking about. If you have assets, second, third, fourth, fifth assets, and you were planning to dispose of them, you may need to begin to think about how you go about them in a way that you're not impacted, because at the end of the day, we need more money in our pockets, right? And then there's the national living wage, which has gone up as well. And remember, threshold for income tax has been frozen up to 2028. What happens is, with the national minimum wage, living wage and minimum wage being increased by up to 10% or so, what happens is that more people will be pulled into the tax nets, right? So as your wage increases, if you go higher into the tax net, and then you pay more tax. So it's usually what some people call, what the government has done now is what they call a stilt tax. It's a kind of indirect kind of taxation, where they don't come out directly and say, oh, we're going to tax you more, but indirectly they're dragging more people into the tax net in a way that, more people will pay tax eventually. More people will pay tax. So even from the regular workers, and then from even pensioners, because we're talking about the pensioners as well. For the pensions, pensions are going to go up by 10.1% from next year. And that means more money in the hands of people, right? But again, with that comes more tax even for pensioners, right? So this is something that people are saying, okay, you give us this way, but you've frozen the thresholds. Because normally when wages go up, government will usually, increase or, fluctuate the threshold so people can keep more monies. But what has happened now, the government has frozen the threshold and increased wages. So again, it could be what really understanding what eventually nets up, but at the end of the day, disposable income will definitely be lower. And then eventually there is the universal credit, which was another interesting one. And I felt this is something we needed to be discussing more in the UK. We have a lot of people on universal credit who are of working age, who have the energy to work, but they're not working. So the government is saying that 600,000 people will need to see a work coach to discuss their earning hours, their working hours, and maybe their job search criteria, to review that and see if we can get more people into the workspace, because there are jobs, but there are no people to work to do them. And I think, we need to start incentivizing the right behaviors. And I think that's one of the good things. And then the very interesting one was the money is going into the NHS and schools, huge amounts of money. So basically, it was not as grim as we all expected, let's be frank. But like Steve did mention the last time, most of this, the government has done it the way that most of these payments, or most of these payments really for these spending cuts, or sorry, this cuts really, or however you want to put it, has been pushed to 2025, 2026, and interestingly, by then, who knows the government that will be in power? Maybe the Conservatives will retain power, I don't know, or maybe the Labour would take over. I'm sure a lot of people will be shaking their heads at home and say, no, 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 no. But again, like I said, this is not a political platform. We're just throwing up the conversations. So let's go straight to this. What do we do now? It's all grim, right? And that's why I wanted to discuss this so we can create a kind of an understanding of what the problem is. There is going to be less money in your pockets going forward. That's the truth. From next year to about March, April, when the energy rebate that the government did give to every household in the UK runs out, more people will pay more for energy. Most of these activities or events within the budget kicks off next year. So the reality of a lot of things will begin to kick off within the next, post the next 6 months. So, but how do we begin to embrace this new reality in a way that we don't totally shut down our lifestyle? We don't totally shut down our lives without, doing what we need to do and keeping the lights on. We need to keep the lights of our lives and the lights of our families on, and ensure that we can do other things and, experience a kind of a minimal disruption to our ways of life. So that's why we're trying to look at this, what we call the 7 cures for a lean pause. 7 cures for a lean pause. And like I said, this was called from The Richest Man in Babylon. If you've not read that book, please, take time to read it. It's an old book, really. It's an old book, but I just read it not too long ago, and I felt like there was something to share here, and, basic principles, financial principles, but I think it will be what kind of re-engaging with yourself to ask yourself, and even when he was writing the book 100 years ago, over 100 years ago, the story was over 100 years ago, kind of themed within 100 years ago, he kept on talking about that these are simple things, but in simple things, therein lies the difficult things, because, it could be too simple that you say, oh, come on, what is he saying? I know of this, but really, if you engage yourself, how well have you kept to them? Have they yielded the goals, that you seek to do? So let's look at the first one. What did he say was the first thing you needed to do to be able to cure a lean pulse? And if you're listening and you're really worried about the global crisis, you're worried about, there is, kind of a shrinking, just taking a comment from Omolara. There's a need to leave now. Got another meeting. No problem, Omolara. We can come back to this, and hopefully we can get your comments when you come back. And thanks so much for stopping by. I really appreciate that. And hi, Ashley. It's good to have you in here. You're not so late, but I think we're just kicking off the real meat to it. So, fasten your seatbelt and let's crack on, right? Thanks, guys, for the comments. Omolara, I appreciate that. Yeah. So let's look at the first thing. What was the first admonition about how can we cure this big issue? So like I said, if wherever you are in the world, you're really worried about going through this period, you're not alone, and that's why we're trying to come to you with this. This is our conversation. It's our safe space where we discuss, where we talk about how we will go through, right? You're not alone, to be honest. We are in this together. There's we're all going to experience shrinking pulses, but if we follow this rule, these kind of reflections, we should be fine. Honestly, we should be fine. So the first thing he said was what he called, and I'm not naming them, I'm not writing them the way it was written there. I'm just paraphrasing some of them, right? What I call the 10% rule. So the very first thing he mentioned was that for you to be able to cure a lean pulse in the future, because some people are really worried about where do I start from? Where do I start from? And they look at the richest men on earth, they look at Bill Gates, they look at Mark Zuckerberg. They look at in Nigeria, there's the richest man in Africa is from Nigeria, Dangote. They look at the, some really top, people. And they're wondering, in my very little way, I earn only £19,000 per annum, right? How can I build wealth in a way that I can be worth £1 million or I can be worth £1 billion? Because it's possible, guys. How can I do that? We're just talking about the founder of the FTX, who was worth over 36. I think it was Steve who was talking about it the last time. Worth over $36 billion, right? And all that. But again, you can now begin to ask yourself, how do I get to that stage? Now, let's start from the very base, right? The very base. And it's really important that you are able to take note of the base, because sometimes we get so carried away by what the future holds that we are not able to manage the now, right? So wherever you are, you have a job, even if it's a part-time job, you have, or you don't have a job, for instance, you get an allowance. You're on an allowance, you're on universal credit, for instance. Whatever it is you do, as far as some little money comes into your hands, right? The first thing is to desire, first and foremost, to be wealthy, right? It is not wishful thinking. Just desire it in your heart. Again, I keep talking about not letting a good crisis go to waste. This is a good time, really, to feel angry about your financial position, to feel that, kind of anger about your wealth situation. And that's where it starts. Desire it first in your heart that I want to be rich. I want to be rich. I want to have wealth. I want to build wealth. Now, once you've desired it, the first thing that was said in the book is that you need to now learn how to stack up your income. And in stacking up your income, whatever it is you do, we've called it the 10% rule. You must learn how to bring out 10% of your income for your purse, right? And there is something I've come to learn over the years, and I'm sure if that's the case with you, please drop a message that when your needs or what you use money, what you do with money, there's never a lack of what to do with money. Right. So if you earn 100,000, there are problems of £100,000 to spend. Right. If you earn £200,000, your problems will increase to £200,000. So there's always something to do. Right. And sometimes the problem with us is that not the problem, or let's say the challenge really is that we tend to mistake needs and wants, if you will, necessities and non-necessities, and we kind of model them up and then we use them. But if you start today, start this end of this month to keep it a tenth of your earnings, whatever it is you earn, even if it's £500 you earn in a month, £200, £300, just keep a tenth of it. Put it away. Just put it away. It's the basics of financial education. Right? It's like the basic rule, right? But it's as difficult as it can get if you don't start practicing it, right? So keep this aside. And once you've done this, what happens is that you begin to have more confidence in yourself. You begin to be happy with yourself. You become happier that, yes, you can do something. There is this psychology around making a decision and following it through, no matter how little it is. It bolsters your confidence and you're able to take on the next challenge, right? And then once this is done, the next thing you need to do is to control your expenses. And controlling your expenses simply means, kind of doing your budgeting, right? And I assure you, this is not very easy, but it's doable. And from experience, once you've done this, you will find out that whatever it is your expenditures usually are or were, you will still have more at the end of the month, when you're spending your 90% more. So the next thing to do is to think about budgeting. How do you control your expenses? Try to make a note of all the things you use. I think a good way to do it will be, go through your bank account and just print your bank statement for the last 2-3 months. I think almost every bank, you can do it on your app. You can just download a soft copy, and check through where has your money been going to. You'll be amazed at some of the things that you've been spending on. And the underlying or the overlying factor here in budgeting is value. The question is, you now need to ask, in all of these things I've spent, in all of these things I've done, which of them has given me the maximum value? No one is asking you at the moment to stop doing some things, right? But I think it's just to engage yourself with which of them have given me more value and which have not given me value, and which of them could I have done without actually lowering my standards, right? My lifestyle, right? And then once you've been able to do that, understand what the things you need in a period, and you're able to allocate resources to them, you become a lot more in charge, and you become really confident in yourself. You're able to take on more challenges. So it actually starts from here. Put away the 10%, and then you control your expenses. Build and there are a lot of templates now. You can find them online. Just go online and Google them. You can get templates you need, where you can do a very simple budget, right? And then try to stick to them. If possible, have different accounts where you move monies into. What I do easily is, and this is me just sharing, something. What I did for my partner as well was, to encourage her to open another account, right? Because to be honest, we've all been guilty of thinking that there is always too much problem to solve, and then we're solving and solving and solving, and before you know it, 5 years is gone. Where is the money? Where have you saved it? Nothing, right? So we opened another account for her where she moves her, her 10% straight into once the money comes in. Just take it as another leg of your expenditure, and it goes right in there, right? And then once you've started doing this, you started valuing, started putting value towards your expenditures, the next thing you need to do is to multiply your gold. So at the point when you started saving this money, this becomes your gold. You need to guard it, your 10%. Keep pushing it out there, putting it in there. And some of us who work in establishments where you get bonuses and stuff like that, sometimes those monies come. If you don't really have plans for them, you spend them all out, and then you don't see what has happened. Some of those monies that come as real extras, and there are no immediate needs for them, can go in here into your pot, into your 10% pot, and that becomes your gold. So at the point where you've learned how to save your 10%, you've learned how to budget, the next thing to do really will be to multiply your gold. And that's where you begin to talk about, how can we make this money grow? Right? Because really nobody gets rich just leaving his money in an account or something. You need to start learning, how do I make this money grow? How do I multiply it? And that's where investment comes in. And you really don't need to have £1 million to start investing. There are a lot of ways you can multiply your little. And it's in that multiplication that you begin to build wealth, right? It's in that multiplication. But remember, there is nothing to build if you don't keep this 10%. So that's actually where the real difficulty is. Being prudent enough to ensure that this 10% is set aside every month, or however the frequency of your earnings are, ensure that this 10% goes into a separate pot. In fact, recently I was having kind of financial education with my daughter, who is just 5, and we've opened a money pot for her. Right, where in this conversation started where she wanted me to give her monies to buy some stuff in school, and then I asked her, who had the money. She took some money from the house, and she showed me that, oh, Daddy, I took this money, I wanted to buy something. And when we had agreed that was wrong, you shouldn't take monies without telling anyone in the house before taking it, even though you're telling me now, but before taking it, we established the fact that money belonged to someone else who worked for it, right? And so we eventually reached that agreement that she has to earn her own monies, right? The money she uses for all those kind of stuff in school. And how will she earn it? By doing some little stuff, and then we pay some 50 pence into that pot, we pay some 20 pence into that pot, and at the end of the term, when they need to do use those monies, she could have enough money in her pot. And the goal really is, when that money is full, I will allow her to make spending decisions. We begin to train and teach. I think at this early stage, we can begin to inculcate very little financial education into them. So I need to run a little faster now. So once you've started doing that, the next thing, the fourth thing to do is to guard your treasure from loss. Now, remember, this is now become your pot, your money pot, your gold. This is your gold. This is what will eventually make you a Bill Gates if you manage this properly. This is actually what is going to make you a Dangote in Africa if you manage this properly. So at the point where this pot is swelling up, right? It's swelling up, right? The next thing you need to do, and you've started investing, you started doing some investments, right? The next thing you need to do is to ensure that you guard your treasure. And one of the principles of investing, because we talked about the third one is investment. One of the principles of investing is that whatever investment you need to do, always make sure that your capital is safe. That's basic understanding. And you would lose some money, no doubt, but you must be calculated about it. And one of the things I learned on my MBA is portfolio balancing. So if you want to do investments, it will be what kind of spreading your investment across a number of portfolios. So for those of us for people who are interested in going into crypto, which is with a very strong caveat, is a very volatile market, you may want to put some money there, put some money into real estate, put some money into, whatever it is, but spread them. You really don't need to have all the money. There are investment managers who do some of these things. You can get them to do that for yourself, but you need to be really participating in those decisions. And the way you can do that is not just to allow investment managers make the decisions. You have to study about what are the investments that are going on right now. Where are the places where people can multiply their gold without losing their treasure. And even if you balance it out, if you lose here, you can net off from the gains of the other place. And and that's actually how it works. Balance, spread your risk in a way that you don't lose your capital. But that's a very key thing in investing. Mostly when you're starting up, you're trying to grow this pot. You need to be careful about the kind of investments you make, just so that you don't lose your capital. And then the fifth thing that I learned from that book, as the fifth cure for a lean purse, was making that dwelling profitable, owning a roof. In fact, own a roof. And this is something, I can't say this enough. I'm sure if you're just joining in, you'll be asking, how can I get here immediately? But if you've started from the beginning, from the first one, you remember you've started multiplying, you started saving, you started budgeting, you started creating value around everything you spend money on, because that's the goal, really. You're not an impulsive spender. You're asking yourself, what's the value in here? Do I really need it? If I don't have it, what's going to happen? You engage in those thought processes before you make any expenditure. That way, you're going to continue growing your pot, and then you started investing, you spread your portfolio, you started getting income, you started getting more income on top of your capital, so your pot is swelling up. The next important thing you now need to begin to think about is owning a roof, right? And that comes about, you could get a mortgage, you could buy off a house if you get the money, but it's always very important, owning a roof, because look at the psychology around the mortgage, for instance, is that if you don't get a mortgage, you're paying rent, you'll keep paying those rents anyways, and you could pay them till perpetuity. And the day you stop paying them, that's the end, you go away. But if you have a mortgage, what happens? Remember, you have saved up some money in your money pot. So you will be able to make some deposits for your mortgage, right? So at that point, you could take up a mortgage and you start paying, your monthly premiums or what they call it. And at the end of a certain period of time, you own the house, right? Even up to 100 years ago, or thematically 100 years ago, this was advised in The Richest Man in Babylon. And I think it's something that everyone should begin to look out for. So from the day one, when you start saving your 10%, ask yourself, what do I really want? What are the goals I'm looking out for? There should be something that propels you to do more, right? Oh, okay, I'm saving towards a house, or I'm saving towards £1 million investment. What net worth? Right? It could be, of course, your net worth doesn't necessarily mean your cash in the bank. It means it could be, what you're what. I mean, yes, what you're what. It could be that you have shares in different companies, you have equities, you have stakes that are worth £1 million, right? Could that be your goal? You could buy into small businesses, startups, and look for them, buy into them. Some will fail, some will survive, right? But there should be something propelling you to put up money into that pot. It could be that you want to own a house, and then when you get up to the mortgage deposit, you can eventually go take up that. But this is a very key thing for anyone, because once this is done, you kind of take away the burden of house rent. Because if you do an analysis of your monthly expenditure, I can assure you, house rent is one of the big chunks in your expenditures every month. I'm sure in this time now, maybe after house rent, we'll be talking energy, because the energy costs have gone up, and then food and stuff like that, which usually was not the case. But if you solve this, I think you're able to solve quite a bit out of your problems, right? And then the sixth one, and I'm rounding off now, the sixth one is to ensure your income. And when I was reading this book, it was really interesting how an old book like that, with thematically old book, was inviting us to ensure our future. So in whatever you're doing, whatever the plans are, okay, I want to own a house, I want to own a business, I want to own £1 million, you must be able to ensure your own old age, or for your family, or for people around you. And that calls about this whole family insurance thing, which a lot of people play down, but it is very important, because you could be putting away £10 every month, and this conversation nobody wants to talk about is that death is real, or incapacitation happens. People could go permanently incapacitated, right? And then what happens to your loved ones? What happens to the people who depend on you, right? So this is something very important. It may not be that. It could be also that you're diversifying your investments in a way that they begin to pay in, as you grow older. But it's important to begin to think about it, because as your wealth begins to grow, there is a need to start thinking about when you will be less viable, less capable to work out those monies, right? And then you need to think about what happens to you. And then the final one, which I think is one of the most important, is that at this point, when you begin to, your pot is growing, you're diversifying, you're investing, you're multiplying your gold, the important thing you now need to do is that you need to begin to now think about, how do I increase my capacity, my capability to earn more? And this is something that also comes out from that book. How do I increase my capability to earn more? How do I increase that? And that could be becoming, subscribing to something like Roadmap MBA, because you look at, what do we do here? We're sharing knowledge, continuously sharing knowledge. If you stick up to this channel, you are always going to be catching something to run with, something to, for your business, something for your career. You must be picking up something. And when you keep picking these things up, you go back to, I'll tell you a quick example, a very quick example. I once was posted to the head office of my company I was working for. And when I got in there, I found out that I needed to really upskill myself to be able to make any progress in that space. What I did was to quickly go and, enroll in what I called a mini MBA then. I did a kind of a crash mini MBA program where I learned basic stuff around, developing financial models, right? Problem solving, basic skills and stuff like that. And while I was doing that, I was applying it immediately at my workplace. In fact, I still remember once my boss, I did a financial model right? And I took it to him to review it. And he looked at me and said, Tony, where did you learn this from? Because he knew where I was coming from, right? He knew there was no way on earth I would have gotten that information. Immediately, I had increased my capability or my capacity to earn, even while still on that job. And, you know, within 6 months or so of joining that team, I was made a team lead because my boss could, you know, he could trust my process. Right? And these things are not rocket science. If you stick up to Roadmap MBA, what we do here is we try to give you a roadmap, right? That ensures that anytime, and that's what is in this book, anytime you are able to come back here and engage with the team here and able to solve your ongoing problems and become more valuable in any space you find yourself, any space you find yourself. So that's continuous increasing your capacity to earn becomes an agile process. You have to continue doing it. And what better platform than where you can do it for free, absolutely free, or for just a premium for some extra services. So this is just inviting you again. Like I said at the beginning, we have launched our new website on the platform, and that's a platform Steve has been working on, and the new website is there now. You can go in there, register, and let's crack on. But again, at the end of the day, the goal really is for us to be able to begin to how do we save, how do we cure this lean pause that the global crisis has besieged on us, right? How do we ensure that we don't totally disrupt our lifestyle in trying to cope with these new happenings? So we need to start saving, we need to start multiplying those, we need to start investing no matter how little. You can reach out to Steve if you're confused about any of this. Please just write guest list at roadmapmba.com, and then you will get an answer. Reach out to any of the teams here. We can begin to dialogue on how we can get on this. Remember, that's the essence of this community. You're not alone. We're together in it. Whatever the damage may have been caused in Russia, right, by Putin, but recovery can be done in Roadmap MBA. So thank you very much, and it was good having you guys again today, and I wish you all a good evening. Till next time. Cheers.